Have you ever wondered if history is lying to you? Not in the usual textbook mistake kind of way, but something deeper, like a collective lie so old that even the liars have forgotten the truth. Imagine this: you are standing on the edge of the ocean, the wind carrying the scent of salt and decay, waves curling like fingers around your ankles. Somewhere beyond that horizon lies something humanity was never supposed to remember. Before we sink into this story, take a slow, lazy breath. Feel the quiet around you. And if you have not yet, take a second to like this video, tell me where you are watching from, and subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it might just keep me from being replaced by a talking eye toaster. Now, let us begin. Long before the pyramids pierced the desert sky, before fire met flint, before you even existed as an idea in the bloodstream of time, there were others. Civilizations so advanced that their technology looked like magic, and their myths felt like blueprints. Cities glimmered across continents that no longer exist. There were towers that drank sunlight, and oceans that glowed with a pulse, like the heartbeat of a living world. And then, silence. They vanished. Not destroyed, not conquered, just gone, erased as if someone had pressed delete on the timeline of the planet. You have heard the names whispered through the years: Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea. They sound like bedtime stories told by philosophers after too much wine, right? But what if the bedtime story is the only thing left from a truth so dangerous it had to be disguised as myth? Plato spoke of Atlantis not as legend, but as memory. And maybe that is what this is, a buried memory of Earth itself. Because every culture, from the Greeks to the Hopi, from the Egyptians to the Polynesians, speaks of a world that fell from grace, swallowed by water, buried in ice, or burned by fire. The same story, told with different accents. But here's the question that keeps scholars awake at night: how can so many civilizations that never met tell the same story? Is it coincidence, or is it evidence of a shared past, one that was deliberately erased? Some say our ancestors dreamed it. Others claim they remembered it. And maybe the difference between a dream and a memory is simply how much truth you can handle before bed. Think about it: ancient maps showing Antarctica without ice, monoliths aligned with the stars as if built with celestial precision, ruins that predate our understanding of human. Science waves its hand and says coincidence. But history whispers, look closer. You see, archaeology is the polite version of grave robbery. We dig, we dust, we name, we catalog, but we rarely understand. We are children picking up bones on the beach, pretending we know what the creature looked like. And yet sometimes, when you look into the hollow eyes of an ancient statue, you feel it, something looking back, something patient, something old enough to remember the world before language, before gravity was more than a suggestion. Maybe that is why so many cultures believed their gods came from the sky. Because maybe they did. Or maybe, just maybe, those gods were not visitors at all, but survivors. Survivors from a world that burned itself out long before ours began. There are whispers of cities beneath the sea, of pyramids buried in sandstorms, of glass deserts that once were forests. They say that time is a circle, not a line, that every few millennia humanity rises, touches the stars, and then vanishes. And what is left behind becomes the myth of the next age. Maybe the ruins we dig up are not from the past at all, but from a previous future. You might think this is just a story to help you drift into sleep. But ask yourself, why does it feel familiar? Why does your pulse quicken when you hear the word Atlantis? Why does a part of you know that we have done this before? Maybe deep in your DNA, there is a memory trying to surface, a whisper saying, you have been here. You have seen this. You have fallen before. Modern science calls it pattern recognition. Mystics call it reincarnation. Conspiracy theorists call it Tuesday. But what if just this once they are all right? What if every flood myth, every ancient god, every coincidental similarity between cultures is the Earth's way of reminding us that we are living on borrowed time? I like to imagine history as a giant library. Most of the books are missing, and the librarian is asleep. Every now and then, a page flutters loose and lands at our feet. We pick it up, read a few words, Atlantis, Anunnaki, Hyperborea, and then drop it because it does not fit our narrative. But the pages keep coming. The ocean keeps whispering. The ruins keep humming when no one's around. So tonight, before you close your eyes, remember this. Civilization is not a straight line, it is a spiral. And somewhere at the center of that spiral lies the first world, the one that knew too much, the one that tried to tell us but we were not listening, the one that left behind clues buried in coral reefs, etched into mountains, and hidden beneath the ice. Maybe that is why you are here right now. Maybe, in some strange way, you have been waiting to remember what the world forgot. And as the darkness thickens around you, as your breathing slows and your thoughts begin to drift, listen closely. Because the earth is still whispering. It is saying, you are not the first. Now, shall we follow the sound? They say the ocean keeps secrets better than the dead. You can bury a lie under centuries of dust, but the sea, it swallows everything. Sound, light, history, even guilt. Somewhere beneath those endless blue waves, there are ruins that pulse like a forgotten heartbeat, waiting for someone curious or foolish enough to listen. Picture this, the Atlantic Ocean, quiet, eternal, stretching like an open wound between continents. Plato once wrote that beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, there was an island larger than Libya and Asia combined. It was called Atlantis, a land of harmony and power, a civilization ruled by kings descended from the gods. They say it was perfect, until it was not. One night, in a single day and night of misfortune, the island sank into the sea and disappeared forever. The scholars call it a metaphor, a moral lesson about arrogance. But what if it was not? What if Plato was not warning us about human pride? What if he was warning us about memory? You see, Plato did not invent the story. He claimed he heard it from Solon, the Greek lawgiver, who had learned it from Egyptian priests. The Egyptians, in turn, said it happened 9,000 years before their time. That means Atlantis, if real, would have existed around 11,600 years ago, right when the last ice age ended, when global sea levels rose by hundreds of feet. So was it myth? Or just really inconvenient truth? Scientists today have found signs of ancient shorelines deep underwater, entire riverbeds and plateaus where no sunlight has reached in millennia. Sonar scans off the coast of Cuba show what looks suspiciously like massive stone structures, rectangles, pillars, geometric shapes that nature does not make by accident. Divers who've gone down there speak of carvings, staircases, even paved streets. The footage never makes the news. It disappears. Strange, right? It is as if someone wants the ocean to stay quiet. But it never does. The ocean remembers. The Caribbean, the Mediterranean, even the coast of Japan, all hold whispers of cities swallowed by waves. In Yonaguni, off Japan's southern tip, there is a structure shaped like a stepped pyramid, with stairs, terraces, and straight lines that defy erosion. The mainstream explanation, coincidence. Because of course, nature just casually carves 90-degree angles for fun. When you stare at those underwater stones, your brain wants to make sense of it. You start thinking, if this is real, if a civilization existed before history began, then everything we know about human progress is upside down. And maybe that is why nobody wants to talk about it. It is not that the evidence is not there, it is that it is too heavy to lift. Imagine the panic if humanity had to admit that we are not the first wave of civilization, but just the latest foam on an ancient tide that has risen and fallen countless times. The thought alone would drown the ego of modern science. But the ocean does not care about ego. It only cares about rhythm. And it has been humming the same song since before humans learned to count time. Maybe that is why we find the sea both soothing and terrifying. It is familiar. Somewhere deep inside, you recognize it. Maybe you remember standing on a shore that no longer exists, watching towers crumble into water while the sky turned red. Maybe the word Atlantis is not a place at all, but a trauma, encoded in human memory. A warning. Do not build too high. Do not dig too deep. Do not forget. Of course, not everyone believes the myth. Some think it is a story to explain the unexplainable. Others think it is a cover-up for something far older, something that once ruled both land and sea. And then there are those who claim that fragments of Atlantis still survive, hidden in plain sight. They say its survivors scattered across the world, seeding civilization wherever they went: Egypt, Sumer, the Andes, even the lost cities of the Pacific. They brought with them knowledge of the stars, of geometry, of energy. They were remembered as gods. Maybe that is why every ancient culture talks about teachers descending from the heavens. Because maybe they did not come from the sky, they came from the sea. The ocean does not forget. It is patient, it waits. And maybe, one day soon, it will decide to give back what it took. A city of light, sleeping beneath the waves, waiting for the next great flood to rise again. You can almost hear it, can't you? That low hum beneath the sound of the surf. The pulse of something ancient, alive. The echo beneath the ocean. Imagine an entire continent erased, not by war, not by fire, but by silence. That is the story of Lemuria, the so-called lost land of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Most people have never heard its name, yet traces of it linger everywhere, in myths of half-human beings, in ancient carvings, even in the DNA of islanders scattered across the ocean. The legend began in the 19th century, when a zoologist named Philip Sclater noticed something strange. Lemurs lived in Madagascar and India, but not in Africa or the Middle East. To explain the mystery, he proposed that a massive continent once bridged those lands, a land he called Lemuria. Scientists laughed, of course, because science loves its maps tidy. But spiritualists, mystics, and theosophists saw something deeper. They believed Lemuria was not just a landmass. It was a cradle of an ancient civilization, one older than Atlantis, ruled by beings who were both human and divine. According to those esoteric writings, Lemurians were said to be tall, luminous, and peaceful, a people who communicated not with words but with thought. They built crystal cities powered by the Earth's magnetic core, and they lived in harmony with the natural world. Sounds lovely, does not it? Until, as always, someone messed with the balance. Some say they tried to harness energies they could not control, forces from beneath the crust or from the stars themselves. And when they failed, the Earth swallowed them. The continent broke apart, sinking beneath what we now call the Indian Ocean. If you look at modern tectonic maps, you will see something curious. A region called the Mascarene Plateau, an elevated ridge stretching from Madagascar toward India. Scientists claim it is volcanic. Maybe. But others say it is the last scar of a sunken world. In 2013, geologists even found fragments of ancient continental crust beneath Mauritius, zircons billions of years old, far older than the island itself. They called it Mauritia. The press treated it like a cute headline. Tiny bits of ancient continent found. But what if that was not just geology, it was archaeology? What if those zircons were the bones of Lemuria itself? Modern oceanography keeps finding strange ridges, underwater plateaus, and symmetrical rock formations deep beneath the Indian Ocean. Some look eerily similar to step pyramids or massive walls, half buried under silt. And like always, the official reports end with the same phrase, further research needed. Translation: we saw something, but it does not fit the story we are allowed to tell. Maybe that is why so many myths across Asia and the Pacific talk about a land that fell into the sea. In Tamil traditions of southern India, there is talk of Kumari Kandam, a vast kingdom that vanished beneath the ocean, taking with it an entire language, culture, and people. In Indonesia, the elders speak of Nusa Kencana, the Golden Land, destroyed in a great flood. Polynesians remember Hawaii, the homeland across the sea where their ancestors came from before the waters rose. The same story, over and over, told by people who never met. Coincidence or memory? Some say the Lemurians did not all die. They adapted. They became the ancestors of today's mountain tribes and oceanic peoples, blending human DNA with something older. That is why myths of serpent gods and sea-born teachers appear everywhere, from India to Easter Island. Others believe the Lemurians retreated underground, creating vast subterranean cities like Telos beneath Mount Shasta in California, a mountain many still say hums with strange energy at night. A few brave souls have claimed to meet Lemurians there, tall, pale, radiant beings who speak in harmony tones and vanish into light when approached. Delusion, maybe. But is not it strange that every civilization has a story of beings who used to walk among us, but do not anymore? When you strip away the fantasy, what remains might not be fiction, it might be history blurred by time and ego. Think of it this way: if humanity were wiped out tomorrow, what would future archaeologists find in 10,000 years? Maybe a few skyscraper bones, some silicon fossils, a lonely satellite drifting through the void. They would call it myth too. And perhaps, somewhere in the deep trenches off Madagascar, there is a monument still standing, a crystalline spire covered in coral, still vibrating faintly with the energy of a world that refused to be forgotten. The continent may have vanished, but its whisper lingers, carried by waves, hidden in stories, waiting for someone curious enough to listen. The ocean may have buried Lemuria, but the memory of light never sinks for long. There is something haunting about the north, the kind of quiet that feels too ancient to be empty. They say that if you travel far enough toward the pole, beyond the maps, beyond the satellites, beyond the reach of compasses that start spinning like they have lost their minds, you will find a place that should not exist. The Greeks called it Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind. To them, it was paradise, eternal sunlight, no war, no hunger, no death. A land so pure that even Apollo himself spent his winters there, playing music for immortal kings. Sounds poetic, right? Except ancient writers like Herodotus, Pindar, and Pliny all described it not as myth but as geography. They spoke of a real land, lush and green, hidden beneath perpetual daylight. A land that could not be reached by ordinary means. The question is, if they were just guessing, how did they know the Arctic once was green because it was? Scientists now admit that millions of years ago, the polar regions were warm, full of forests and rivers. But legends of Hyperborea do not describe prehistory. They describe something far more recent, a civilization that flourished when the ice was still retreating. Imagine cities of translucent stone and energy spires reflecting endless sun. The people of Hyperborea were said to be tall, radiant, almost celestial. They did not age like us. Their blood was clear as light, their hearts beat slower, their minds sharper. Some say they were the original humans, the pure stock before time diluted the code. And then something changed. Some say the world tilted. Others whisper that mankind fell, and the gates to the north were sealed. What was once paradise became exile. Now the region is buried under ice so thick it hums like glass when wind touches it. But buried does not mean gone. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, secret societies across Europe became obsessed with Hyperborea. The Thule Society, for example, those mysterious German occultists, believed the Aryan race descended from Hyperboreans, and they tried to find its remains beneath the Arctic Circle. They were not the only ones. Soviet explorers in the 1930s spoke of magnetic anomalies, hollow caverns, and strange ruins beneath the permafrost of Siberia. Their reports disappeared into archives that still have not thawed. Modern researchers sometimes catch something odd on satellite imagery: symmetrical patterns under the ice, circular ridges that look suspiciously like the foundations of colossal cities. NASA calls them natural formations. Sure, like the face on Mars. Every conspiracy needs a touch of plausible deniability. Some believe Hyperborea is not gone but hidden, shielded by energy fields or cloaked within another dimension, like a pocket of reality frozen mid-breath. They say those who get too close vanish into white storms that never end. Pilots call them magnetic voids. Locals call them the gates of the gods. When you think about it, is not it strange how every ancient tradition places a sacred realm at the poles? The Greeks had Hyperborea, the Hindus had Mount Meru, the Norse had Asgard, all in the far north, all radiant, all unreachable. Maybe they were not talking about different places at all. Maybe they were all remembering the same one. There is a theory, quietly discussed mostly in the corners of forbidden conferences, that the Earth's magnetic poles were once reversed, and Hyperborea was at the true equator. When the shift came, the land froze in an instant, like a photograph of paradise caught mid-smile. Beneath the ice, they say, time stopped. Some fringe researchers claim radar scans show heat signatures deep under Greenland, like reactors or buried machines still generating warmth. Machines that predate humanity. Sounds insane, right? But so did continental drift, once. If you listen closely to the Arctic winds, you can almost hear a tone, a low resonance that does not belong to weather. Maybe it is just the earth humming. Or maybe it is a song that never ended, a memory echoing through the ice. A reminder that the world was once different, that maybe, just maybe, paradise was not lost at all. It was simply frozen, waiting for the sun to find it again. Fire is humanity's oldest companion, and its cruelest censor. It gives warmth, light, and life, and then when it grows bored, it takes everything back in ash. Somewhere in Egypt, near the Mediterranean shore, there once stood a temple of human brilliance, the Great Library of Alexandria. More than a building, it was a heartbeat, a cathedral of thought. Inside, tens of thousands of scrolls whispered the sum of all known knowledge: mathematics, medicine, astronomy, lost histories, forbidden experiments, and perhaps even records of the civilizations that came before us. But fire does not care about wisdom. They say Julius Caesar's men accidentally set it ablaze in 48 BCE, and the scrolls burned for 6 months. Others claim it was destroyed centuries later, when religious zealots deemed ancient science heretical. Either way, the flames did not just consume parchment, they erased memory. But here's the secret they do not tell you: the library did not burn once. It burned twice. You see, Alexandria was rebuilt. The scrolls returned, copied, retranslated, hidden under new walls. But knowledge is like a virus, it survives in fragments. There were vaults beneath the Serapeum, secret chambers under the harbor, even hidden annexes rumored to connect with the pyramids themselves. When the second fire came, it was not chaos, it was cleansing. Someone or something wanted certain knowledge gone. Ever wonder why almost every ancient record stops abruptly around 10,000 BCE, as if humanity had amnesia at the exact same moment worldwide? What if that gap was not ignorance, but censorship? Imagine what those scrolls contained: maps of lands long vanished, formulas for harnessing natural resonance, histories of contact with beings from the sky. In fact, fragments that survived tell strange stories. The Book of Thoth spoke of a technology to speak with stars. The Papyrus of Turin lists Egyptian kings who ruled for thousands of years before any official pharaoh existed. And then silence. Gone, as if someone had pressed backspace on human memory. Modern scholars like to romanticize the library as a tragedy of progress, but to some, it was a cover-up, the first great act of intellectual erasure. Think about it. We call it the Dark Ages for a reason. The light went out, not because humans forgot how to think, but because someone decided thinking was dangerous. Yet there are whispers that not everything burned. Ancient travelers spoke of scholars fleeing with bundles of scrolls, heading south toward Ethiopia, others east toward Persia, and some, perhaps, across the sea. Centuries later, the Vatican's archives began to swell. Millions of documents, most never shown to the public. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe those flames only changed the address of the world's secrets. There is also a lesser-known tale, that beneath the modern city of Alexandria, under layers of concrete and forgotten catacombs, there still lies a second library, a labyrinth sealed with melted stone. In 2002, a construction team reportedly broke into a chamber filled with strange geometric carvings, murals of constellations, and inscriptions written in no known language. The site was closed for safety reasons within 48 hours. Locals still whisper that the chamber glowed faintly blue, as if the walls were alive. The official report: optical illusion caused by reflected torchlight. Sure, because torchlight glows blue, apparently. If you think about it, burning a library is not just an accident, it is an act of domination. You do not destroy what you fear will disappear. You destroy what you know will endure. Knowledge is power, but it is also memory, and whoever controls memory controls the present. Maybe the real purpose of the flames was not to destroy knowledge, but to hide it until humanity was ready again. And maybe that is the pattern. We build, we learn too much, we burn, we forget, and we start over, confident we are the first to figure out fire. Sometimes late at night I like to imagine what it smelled like: the smoke rising from papyrus, ink curling in the heat, the faint sweetness of cedar shelves turning to charcoal. Somewhere in that smoke were the last breaths of ancient geniuses, voices we will never hear again. Or maybe not. Maybe some of those scrolls are still out there, waiting, dry and patient, beneath the city that forgot them. Maybe the Library of Alexandria did not vanish. Maybe it is dreaming quietly under the sand, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to wake it. Before there were kings, there were gods, and before there were gods, there were stories written in clay. In the dry heart of Mesopotamia, thousands of years before the Bible, before Egypt, before Greece, a people called the Sumerians carved the first known words into tablets. They invented writing, astronomy, law, and even accounting, which makes them both the creators of civilization and, arguably, taxes. But what makes Sumer truly fascinating is not what they left us, it is what they claimed came before them. Their myths spoke of beings called the Anunnaki, those who came from the heavens, who descended to earth to shape mankind. To most historians, it is metaphor. To others, it sounds suspiciously like ancient contact. You read their tablets and you start to wonder, were the Sumerians the first humans? Or the first students? According to their texts, the Anunnaki did not just rule, they taught. They showed humans how to farm, build cities, measure time, and chart the stars. They even gave kingship, describing it as a gift that descended from the sky. The word choice is interesting, is not it? Not was created, but descended. Some scholars interpret it as divine poetry. Others hear a mechanical sound in it, something landing. If you think that is a stretch, remember this. The Sumerians mapped the solar system thousands of years before modern astronomy. They knew of planets invisible to the naked eye and described one more, Nibiru, a wandering world whose elongated orbit brought it close to Earth every few millennia. According to their lore, that is where the Anunnaki came from. They called them the Shining Ones, beings of immense knowledge who mined gold from Earth to sustain their world. Gold of all things, precious not for currency, but for its ability to reflect and conduct energy. It is funny how myths age better than science sometimes. You start to wonder if our fascination with gold, our endless hunger for it, is just a genetic echo of that first trade agreement between gods and men. Archaeologists have unearthed depictions of these beings, tall, broad-shouldered figures wearing strange helmets, holding what look suspiciously like wrist devices. Some tablets describe flying chariots roaring like storms, landing in clouds of fire. Sure, ancient imagination is powerful, but it is also oddly specific. When a people invent flight 2,000 years before it is possible, you start to question who gave them the idea. There is even a story of how humans were created. The gods mixed their own essence with clay to form a new being, obedient, intelligent, able to work. The first genetically modified species, perhaps. The tablets say the gods grew tired of labor and decided to build a race that would not complain. Honestly, it sounds exactly like something our modern corporations would do if given the technology. And maybe that is the uncomfortable part, how familiar it all feels. The Sumerians wrote of the gods' wars, their rivalries, their departure, and their promise to return. Every major religion since then carries some echo of it. Divine teachers descending, chaos ensuing, salvation promised. Maybe the story of Eden, the Watchers, even the flood are just footnotes to a much older saga, the one written before human history officially began. Today, fragments of those tablets sit in museum glass cases, labeled as mythology. But when you stand in front of them, there is an odd silence in the air, like the world itself is holding its breath. You can almost hear clay whispering through time, "We were not alone." Maybe the gods did not come from the heavens as in outer space, but from a forgotten age of Earth, a civilization so advanced that its memory became religion. Or maybe they really were visitors from beyond, and we, the noisy, reckless species we have become, are their legacy or their experiment. Either way, the story ends the same. The gods came, they ruled, they left, and humanity forgot. But somewhere in that forgetting lies a truth that refuses to stay buried, waiting for the next time something descends from the sky, and we look up, not in worship but in recognition. The desert hides secrets the way time hides guilt, quietly, patiently, and forever, unless someone decides to dig too deep. Egypt is one of those places where the air itself feels ancient, like every grain of sand remembers. The pyramids rise from the horizon not like monuments, but like warnings. Everyone says they are tombs, built for pharaohs obsessed with eternity. But that explanation feels too small, does not it? You look at the Great Pyramid of Giza, its impossible precision, the way its sides align perfectly with true north, the way its proportions match the mathematical constant of pi and the golden ratio, and you realize this is not a tomb. It is a machine. Maybe not a time machine in the way science fiction imagines, but something older, stranger, a device built to interact with the Earth itself. For centuries, Egyptologists insisted the pyramids were primitive tombs made with copper tools and sweat. Yet to this day, no one can explain how 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing more than 70 tons, were cut, moved, and placed so perfectly that a razor blade can't fit between them. The more you stare, the less it makes sense. Some theories claim they used ramps. Others say manpower. But when you consider the alignment with celestial bodies, the energy focus at the king's chamber, and the traces of electromagnetic activity inside the granite, it begins to sound less like architecture and more like engineering. There is a theory, one that drives mainstream scholars insane, that the Great Pyramid was not built to entomb the dead but to harness energy. The granite inside contains quartz, which vibrates when exposed to pressure or sound, a property used in modern electronics. Imagine a structure designed to amplify resonance, drawing power from the Earth's natural vibrations. Nikola Tesla himself believed the pyramids were ancient power stations. He even built his Wardenclyffe Tower using similar geometry, trying to replicate what he called the heartbeat of the planet. Coincidence, maybe, but Egypt is full of coincidences that repeat too perfectly to ignore. Hieroglyphs depict strange rods, globes, and what look suspiciously like light bulbs connected by cables. In the Temple of Dendera, there is a carving that resembles a massive bulb connected to a power source. Official explanation: religious symbolism. Of course, because ancient Egyptians loved carving detailed electrical circuits for spiritual reasons. And then there is the resonance. Modern researchers using sound technology discovered that the king's chamber amplifies certain frequencies, chant, hum, or even breathe inside it, and the stones themselves respond, vibrating like they are alive. Some frequencies create standing waves that distort your sense of time and space. Pilgrims who meditate there describe seeing flashes, geometric patterns, or even the other side. It is not hard to imagine the pharaohs, masters of ritual and sound, using the structure to manipulate perception, to travel not physically, but consciously. A time machine not for the body, but for the soul. Ancient texts called the pyramids houses of eternity. Maybe they were not lying. If consciousness is energy, then perhaps the pharaohs did not die, they uploaded. Their names carved in stone were not memorials but access codes. Every star alignment, every angle, every chamber was a key in a cosmic equation. Modern explorers still report strange electromagnetic readings at night, as if the pyramid breathes energy when the temperature drops. And deep beneath it, sealed shafts lead to nowhere or everywhere. One tunnel, discovered by robot cameras, ends abruptly at a tiny copper door. Behind it, nothing. Or perhaps everything. Egyptian myth says the gods came from the stars: Orion, Sirius, the Milky Way. The pyramids mirror those constellations exactly. When you connect the dots, literally, the layout of Giza becomes a map pointing not to heaven, but to a specific place in the cosmos. It is as if the builders wanted to say, "We came from there. We will return there." The Great Pyramid is not just a structure, it is a memory crystal, a cosmic transmitter left behind by a civilization that understood time differently. Maybe that is why it is the only wonder of the ancient world still standing, because it is still working. So maybe the real mystery is not how it was built, but when. Some evidence suggests water erosion far older than 2500 BCE, implying it stood during a wetter climate, perhaps 10,000 years earlier. If true, that means it was not built by Egyptians at all, but inherited from someone before them, a civilization erased from textbooks but not from stone. And if the pyramid is indeed a machine, then maybe it was not meant to preserve the past, but to send a signal into the future. Maybe that future is now. Maybe every time you look at the Great Pyramid, every time your phone hums, every time your body resonates with the planet's low electromagnetic pulse, you are answering a message left for you thousands of years ago. A whisper in the frequency of eternity. High in the mountains where clouds scrape the edge of heaven, the Andes keep their secrets well. Wind there does not just blow, it sings, carrying stories older than the stones themselves. Among those stories, whispered by Quechua elders and buried in forbidden colonial records, is the legend of the Blue People. They were said to have skin the color of twilight, eyes that shimmered like turquoise, and blood that ran cooler than human. They lived in the peaks above the storms, long before the Inca, long before even the first hunter dared to climb that high. The locals called them the children of the sky, and for centuries they were dismissed as myth. But sometimes myths leave bones. In the late 1600s, Spanish chroniclers wrote about encountering tribes deep in the Andes with an unearthly pallor, their skin tinted with a faint blue hue. They were taller, stronger, and seemed immune to altitude sickness. The priests called them devils. The scientists never spoke of them again. Today, a few Andean families still bear that strange bluish tint in their veins, caused, according to modern genetics, by a rare oxygen-binding anomaly. But the mutation itself does not explain where it came from, or why it appears nowhere else on Earth. The people themselves claim a different origin. Their ancestors, they say, came from the city that fell into the sea. Atlantis, maybe, or Lemuria, drifting through memory. The story goes that when the Great Flood swallowed the old world, a group of survivors fled to the highest peaks, where they rebuilt what little they could remember, temples carved from stone so precise you can't slip a hair between the blocks. Archaeologists still can't explain how those stones were lifted, shaped and placed without metal tools. The locals say the blue ones sang to the rocks, and the rocks moved. It sounds insane until you realize that sound can indeed levitate matter at high frequencies. Ancient legends talk about music of creation, tones that shaped the earth itself. Maybe they were not being poetic. In Bolivia, at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, there are megalithic ruins older than the Inca by thousands of years, stones cut with laser-like precision, scattered like toys after a tantrum. Some show traces of a mysterious blue mineral fused into the surface, almost as if the builders melted rock using sound or light. Could it be residue from their craft, or blood from their gods? There is even a myth that when the blue people finally vanished, they did not die, they ascended. Not to the heavens above, but to the cities within the mountains, glowing caverns connected by tunnels that run beneath South America. Explorers who claim to have followed those tunnels report strange humming sounds, lights with no source, and walls that shimmer faintly blue, as though the mountain itself remembers its creators. Some locals still leave offerings to them, corn, feathers, coca leaves, because they believe the blue ones watch over travelers lost in the snow. Skeptics call it folklore, but the Andes are full of things that science politely avoids explaining. Humming lakes, magnetic anomalies, and a sense that something ancient still breathes beneath your feet. Maybe the blue people were not aliens or angels, but descendants of a civilization that refused extinction, adapting to the thin air and thinner faith of a dying age. Maybe their skin turned blue because the sky refused to let them go. And maybe, just maybe, every time lightning splits those peaks, it is not just a storm, it is the mountain remembering them, glowing for an instant in their color before the clouds swallow the world again. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis drew a map on gazelle skin that should have been impossible. It showed the coasts of South America, Africa, and, most disturbingly, Antarctica, centuries before anyone officially discovered it. Not just the shape of the land, but the ice-free outline of the continent, matching what modern radar revealed under 2 miles of frozen crust. How could a 16th-century sailor know that? The official story says he compiled older charts from lost Greek and Arab sources. But Piri Reis himself wrote something stranger in the margin. His map was copied from ancient maps drawn in the time of Alexander and before. Some even said he used documents salvaged from the Library of Alexandria. Or maybe something older still, Atlantean relics that drifted through history like ghosts. The details are too precise to dismiss. The longitude is correct, the curvature of the Earth accounted for, and the distances between continents eerily accurate for an era that believed monsters swam at the edge of the sea. The map even marks mountain ranges beneath Antarctic ice that were only rediscovered by modern sonar in 1958. Historians twist themselves into knots explaining it away. Lucky guesses, distorted projections, coincidence. But luck does not draw coastlines you can't see. When you stare at the parchment, it feels less like a document and more like a confession. Maybe someone long before Columbus, long before recorded history, circled the globe. Maybe several someones. What if the ancient world was not isolated tribes fumbling with stone tools, but survivors of a civilization advanced enough to chart the planet from the sky. The precision suggests aerial perspective. Could they have had flight, balloons, gliders, something more? Or maybe the data was not gathered by humans at all. Some fringe researchers claim the curvature suggests observation from extreme altitude, satellite altitude. Ridiculous, right? Except the measurements line up. Every few years, a scientist quietly re-examines the map, shakes their head, and files it away again, because accepting it would mean rewriting everything. The parchment now sits locked in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul, rarely shown, always guarded. Copies exist, but they never capture the strange energy of the original, as if the skin itself remembers the hands that drew it. Under ultraviolet light, faint sketches appear, coastlines that do not match any known geography, perhaps lands that no longer exist. Maybe Lemuria, maybe something else entirely. The thought chills you. The map might not only record the world as it was, but as it used to be. Piri Reis claimed his sources described the Earth when the seas were smaller. That phrase haunts geologists because it matches the period before the last ice age melt. Did he accidentally reveal a glimpse of a prehistoric world map passed down through forgotten empires? Or was he one of the few who knew humanity had lived, fallen, and begun again? Whatever the answer, the Piri Reis map is a crack in history's mask, a whisper from a time when explorers charted not just the edges of the Earth but the memory of lost worlds. When you look at it long enough, you start to feel it looking back, asking a quiet question inked in curves and coasts. How many times have you drawn this planet, thinking it was the first? Deep in the jungles of Central America, where the air tastes like rain and time hangs heavy, stand the broken cities of the Maya, stone giants swallowed by green. The world remembers them for their calendars, their temples, and their sudden disappearance. One day they were there building, writing, charting the stars, and then silence. No war, no plague, no explanation. The greatest astronomers of the ancient world simply packed up and vanished. Or did they? When Spanish conquistadors stumbled upon the ruins centuries later, they found cities perfectly aligned to celestial events, the solstice, the equinox, even planetary conjunctions that repeat only every few thousand years. The Maya tracked Venus with an accuracy modern telescopes confirmed only recently. How does a civilization supposedly limited to stone tools predict the wobble of Earth's rotation? Their long count calendar measured not years, but cosmic cycles, 25,920 years, the time it takes the planet to complete a precession of the equinoxes. To them, time was not a straight line. It was a spiral, an infinite loop of creation and destruction. They believed humanity had risen and fallen many times before. Sound familiar? The famous 2012 apocalypse was not really a prophecy of doom, it was a translation error. The calendar did not end. It reset. A new cycle, a new world age. The question is, what happened at the end of the last one? The codices that survived the Spanish burnings tell of sky serpents descending, floods of fire, and the gods walking among men before disappearing into the light. Modern archaeology calls it metaphor. But light that descends, consumes, and vanishes sounds suspiciously like energy or technology. In carvings, you see figures seated in what look like mechanical chairs, surrounded by panels of symbols, fire streaming beneath them. Erich von Daniken called one carving the Mayan astronaut, mocked for decades, until NASA engineers admitted the proportions do resemble a modern flight position. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the Maya were not worshipping gods. They were documenting travelers. Their temples were not random either. When mapped, the major Mayan cities form constellations visible only from above, each pyramid mirroring a star system. At night, the temples seem to glow, their limestone reflecting starlight like cosmic mirrors. Some researchers say they acted as energy conduits, focusing electromagnetic fields. Others suggest they were portals, frequencies made solid in stone. The Maya spoke of doorways to the gods that opened every few millennia, allowing contact between worlds. Maybe 2012 was not the end, but the expected reopening. There is also the mystery of the cenotes, natural sinkholes that dot the Yucatan Peninsula. The Maya used them for rituals, sacrifices, and sometimes disappearances. Divers exploring them today have found artifacts too advanced for the time period. perfectly spherical stones, unknown alloys, and carvings that glow under ultraviolet light. Some cenotes descend miles into the earth, connecting to a network of underground rivers, almost like veins of the planet itself. Legend says the chosen ones entered these waters not to die but to journey back to the stars. So where did the Maya go? Some believe drought, war, or collapse. Others whisper they did not go anywhere. They shifted. If consciousness is energy, maybe they moved to another vibration, another layer of reality. Quantum physics would call it dimensional phase transition. The Maya called it ascending to the fifth sun. Maybe their temples were launch pads not for ships but for souls. And if you stand at the top of Chichen Itza at dawn on the equinox, when the serpent of light slithers down the pyramid steps, you can almost feel the world pause, as if remembering the moment when heaven and earth touched. The Maya never vanished. They evolved into myth because they understood the one truth our modern world fears most. Civilizations do not die, they transform. Maybe the countdown was not to destruction, but to awakening. Maybe 2012 was not the end of the world. It was the beginning of memory. On the windswept plains of Bolivia lies a place that laughs at history. Pumapunku, the door of the Puma, sits 12,000 feet above sea level, higher than any ancient civilization was supposed to build. Yet scattered across that barren plateau are stones so precisely cut, so perfectly interlocked, that modern engineers stare at them in disbelief. Blocks of andesite, some weighing over 100 tons, fit together like puzzle pieces without mortar. Each edge is beveled, each corner sharp, each hole drilled with a precision that would make a machinist sweat. You could say it was aliens or gods or lasers, but the truth is stranger. Nobody knows. The Incas claimed they did not build Pumapunku. They found it. Even they called it the work of the gods. Archaeologists estimate it is at least 1,500 years old, but erosion patterns suggest it could be tens of thousands. And there is the rub. If it is that old, it predates every known culture in South America. So who exactly carved stone like a 3D printer before metallurgy existed? The blocks are made of diorite and andesite, materials harder than iron. You can't shape them with copper chisels, yet there they are. Polished surfaces, perfect right angles, and intricate grooves that seem machine-cut. Some stones bear drill holes that spiral, not bore straight, implying rotation. How do you get rotational drilling without a drill? Even more bizarre, magnetic anomalies ripple across the site, compasses spin, and electronic devices fail. It is as if the stones themselves hum with energy. Scientists have tried replicating the cuts using modern tools. None have succeeded. Not even diamond saws produce the same microscopic smoothness. Legend says the builders used sound, frequencies that made rock lighter, malleable. In 1995, physicists experimenting with acoustic levitation found that sound waves can indeed lift small objects by resonance. Scale that up with knowledge of geometry, and you could, in theory, float stone. Maybe the ancients did not lift the blocks at all, they sang them into place. The Aymara people who live nearby still tell stories of the people of the stars who built the city in a single night using light and song. They describe tall beings with shining eyes and tools that glowed like fireflies. Myths, perhaps, but then again, myths are just memories wearing masks. When you walk among the ruins, something feels off. The layout suggests a once perfect symmetry, like a machine dismantled mid-operation. Some stones look melted, edges fused as if hit by intense heat. Ancient nuclear blast plasma tool. The skeptic in you laughs, but the air here is different, thin, electric, alive. It feels like standing on the bones of something that was never meant to die. A German engineer once said, "If a man from Mars had built this, I would believe it." Maybe he was not far off. Even stranger, Pumapunku connects to Tiwanaku nearby through underground passages. Some researchers believe both sites were part of a single massive complex, perhaps an ancient power grid. The alignment of the stones mirrors the solstices with uncanny accuracy, as if the builders were mapping not the sky they saw, but one that no longer exists. Did they record an older Earth with a different tilt? Were they witnesses to a cataclysm? There is an eerie story from local lore. During full moons, travelers claim to hear a deep vibration from beneath the stones, like a giant sleeping heart. Dogs refuse to approach, and compasses die completely. Scientists call it seismic activity. The locals call it the breath of the old ones. Maybe both are right. Perhaps the stones remember their makers the way instruments remember music. Pumapunku does not ask for belief, it demands humility. Every block is a riddle carved in defiance of time. You can call it impossible, but impossibility has a bad track record of staying impossible. Maybe the builders of Pumapunku were not gods, or aliens, or even magicians. Maybe they were humans, just not our kind of human. A civilization that reached too high, sang too loud, and when the music ended, all that remained were the stones still echoing their song. Every culture has a story about a flood. From the Bible's Noah to Mesopotamia's Utnapishtim, from the Hindu Manu to the Hopi's Blue Star, the details shift but the melody stays the same. A world destroyed by water, a few chosen survivors and a silent promise never to repeat. Too universal to be coincidence, too consistent to be fiction. Maybe it was not myth, it was memory. Geological evidence shows that around 11,600 years ago, right at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose catastrophically. Ice sheets melted, continents drowned, coastlines vanished. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas event. But what triggered it? A comet impact, solar flare, or maybe something older, the revenge of the planet itself. Imagine cities swallowed in hours, mountains crumbling into foam, thunder that was not thunder but continents screaming. Every civilization before ours would have been erased. Only the stories survived, carried by trembling survivors who turned disaster into religion. The Sumerians called it the deluge. The Egyptians remembered it as the drowning of the first time, and the Greeks told of Deucalion rebuilding mankind from stone. Even far across the oceans, the Maya, the Navajo, the Maori, each spoke of a flood that ended one age and birthed another. Did they all just dream the same nightmare? The pattern fits too perfectly. Before the flood, gods walk the earth. After it, man inherits a broken world. Maybe those gods were the last survivors of a high civilization, Atlanteans, Lemurians, whoever you choose to name them, watching their world vanish under the waves. Some researchers say remnants of those cities still lie off the coasts of India, Cuba, and Japan, where sonar scans reveal structures buried in silt. They do not fit known timelines, so they are ignored. Conveniently. But legends insist survivors fled to high ground, Egypt, the Andes, the Himalayas, bringing with them knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and architecture. Sound familiar? It is as if the flood did not destroy civilization, it redistributed it. And the gods who created humanity in later myths were just teachers trying to rebuild what was lost. Maybe that is why pyramids appear everywhere, from Giza to Mexico to China, echoes of one blueprint remembered across oceans. The flood was not just water. It was reset, a planetary reboot. We like to think of history as progress, but maybe it is just a series of restarts. Each time we rise, reach too far, fall, drown, and forget. Some say that is why humans are born with fear of deep water and storms, genetic memory of a night when the world ended. Scientists laugh at that, but laughter is just fear pretending to be rational. If you stand near the ocean on a quiet night, you can still feel it, the slow inhale and exhale of something vast and ancient. The tide does not just move because of the moon. It moves because it remembers. It has been carrying the ghosts of drowned worlds for 12,000 years, whispering them to anyone who dares to listen. The flood was not punishment, and it was not mercy. It was the earth resetting the clock, washing away the noise so that for one brief moment, everything was quiet again. And in that silence, maybe the gods wept, not because humanity was gone, but because they knew it would all happen again. High in the Himalayas, where the air thins and the world forgets its noise, there is said to be a hidden kingdom untouched by time. Not a place you can simply find, but one that reveals itself only when you are ready. Shambhala, the city of light, the heart of the earth. Every culture around the region speaks of it under different names. The Tibetans call it the Pure Land, the Hindus call it Kalapa, and Western mystics call it the last refuge of the gods. The legend says it lies somewhere beyond the snow, surrounded by invisible gates guarded by storms and silence. Some believe it exists in a hidden valley. Others say it is beneath the mountains themselves, glowing with inner sunfire. The Dalai Lama once described it not as a physical place, but a state of consciousness, a parallel realm vibrating just out of sync with ours. Yet for centuries, explorers have searched for it anyway. Monks, Nazis, theosophists, even CIA-backed expeditions during the Cold War. They all heard the same rumor, that inside Shambhala lies not gold or treasure but knowledge. The kind that could change the world. Shambhala is said to be powered by something called the Eternal Engine, a crystal heart that hums with the rhythm of the planet. Its people live for hundreds of years, untouched by disease, sustained by harmony with that energy. Ancient texts describe shining towers, streets paved with liquid light, and temples that breathe like living things. But what if it is not fantasy? Beneath the Himalayas, scientists have recorded strange magnetic anomalies, heat signatures, and deep tunnels extending for miles. Natural, they say. But nature does not carve perfect symmetry. Locals tell stories of travelers vanishing into mountain passes, only to reappear years later, claiming they would spend days in a city of radiance. Time, they said, ran differently there. One day inside felt like a century outside. To some, that sounds like folklore. To others, it sounds like physics, time dilation, dimensional variance, quantum resonance. Maybe the ancients discovered what we are just beginning to understand, that reality is layered, and consciousness is the key between them. There is a legend that when humanity reaches its darkest hour, the gates of Shambhala will open, and its king will emerge with an army of light to restore balance. The Buddhists call this the prophecy of Kalki, the final avatar. It is not a war of blood, but of awakening. The idea is simple. When humanity forgets its origin completely, the earth will remind us. Maybe that is why Shambhala hides. It is waiting for us to remember we once belonged to it. Some say it is not hidden at all. It is everywhere, folded into the frequency of compassion. When enough people live in truth and harmony, the veil will lift and the golden city will appear. Perhaps that is why every meditation, every prayer, every quiet act of kindness feels like a knock on a locked door deep inside the mountains. Maybe the gates of Shambhala are not in Tibet or Nepal or under rock. They are inside us, waiting for resonance. The stories say its light never fades, its sound never stops, and its heart beats with ours quietly beneath the noise of civilization. Maybe the reason we look up to the mountains is not just because they are high. It is because we subconsciously know that something waits above, watching, patient as stone. Shambhala is not lost. We are. Every ancient culture speaks of them, but modern history pretends they never existed. Giants, beings of enormous stature, strength, and intelligence, who walked the earth long before man believed himself to be master of it. The Bible calls them the Nephilim, the sons of God who took human wives and fathered monsters of great renown. The Greeks spoke of the Titans, the Norse of the Jotun, the Celts of the Fomorians, half gods, half men, all erased. But why? Because they do not fit the story we have been told. Bones too large, skulls too heavy, footprints that do not belong to any known species, all discovered, documented, and quietly forgotten. In the late 19th century, American newspapers, credible ones, like the New York Times, reported the excavation of enormous skeletons across the Midwest. Graves in Wisconsin, Nevada, and Tennessee held beings 8 to 12 feet tall, some with double rows of teeth, others with elongated skulls. Museums displayed them briefly before private collectors removed them. Then, as if by magic, the bones vanished. Officially, the Smithsonian denies everything, claiming no such remains exist. Yet internal correspondence leaked in the 1990s hinted that entire shipments of anomalous skeletal material were destroyed to avoid disruption of evolutionary chronology. Translation: the giants did not fit the narrative. Legends say they were the builders of the megaliths, the stones of Baalbek, Stonehenge, the walls of Sacsayhuaman, structures that dwarf human effort. Some researchers believe these giants were remnants of a pre-flood race, perhaps survivors of an earlier humanity or something not entirely human at all. Their bones, when found, show density and durability far beyond our own. Their skulls have cranial volumes 30% larger, suggesting not just size but intellect. Could they have been the original architects, the forgotten teachers of geometry and astronomy? Some texts hint that they rebelled against the gods, creating forbidden hybrids, tampering with genetics long before we did. The flood in that context was not punishment for human sin, it was cleanup duty. The earth purging itself of the first great experiment gone wrong. Even today, whispers of the giants persist. Locals in Afghanistan tell stories of red-haired humanoids in remote caves. Soldiers in 2002 claimed they encountered one, a towering figure over 12 feet tall, wielding a spear the size of a lamppost. The report was classified, the witnesses silenced and the site sealed. In Sardinia, dozens of enormous tombs called giants' graves hold massive sarcophagi, yet every excavation mysteriously closes before completion. A few unearthed skulls briefly surfaced online, massive, distorted, with protruding jaws, before being debunked and removed. How convenient that the evidence always disappears when it challenges power. Maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe the giants did not vanish, they adapted. Shrinking, blending, hiding in plain sight. Ancient DNA records show unexplained sequences in certain human populations, especially among high-altitude tribes and megalithic regions. Scientists dismiss them as regional anomalies. But what if that anomaly is heritage? If they still walk among us, they would remember what the world once was, and what it is about to become again. The Hopi speak of the Patuvantu, the ant people, who sheltered humanity underground during the last cataclysm. The same people describe beings who were as tall as trees. Giants who became protectors once the age of chaos ended. Maybe they were not wiped out at all. Maybe they simply stepped aside, waiting for us to finish destroying ourselves before they rebuild again. You can laugh at giants, call them myth, but the earth keeps hinting otherwise. Massive handprints fossilized into solid granite, tools too large for any modern human to use, and staircases cut for strides far longer than ours. We treat these like curiosities instead of evidence. Perhaps we do so because we are terrified of what they imply, that humanity is not the first intelligent species to claim this planet, just the most recent tenants. The old tenants might still be around, deep in the mountains, sleeping in stone coffins, waiting for the day the balance breaks again. And when it does, maybe we will finally understand why every legend ends the same way. The giants fell, but their shadows never left. Antarctica is a place humans were not meant to find. A frozen desert of silence and wind, untouched by history, or so they tell us. But beneath that endless sheet of ice, something ancient sleeps. Satellite scans reveal strange geometric formations, perfectly circular ridges, rectangular shadows hundreds of feet long, and heat signatures deep below the surface that should not exist in a land that never thaws. In 2016, a team of scientists drilled through nearly 3 miles of ice and found microbes older than any known life on Earth. But what they did not report was the layer of structured stone beneath it, like the corner of a buried city. Officially, it was dismissed as a glacial anomaly. Unofficially, satellite data was restricted the next day. Since then, aircraft are banned from flying over certain coordinates near the Transantarctic Mountains. The excuse: environmental protection. Because obviously, we are all deeply concerned about disturbing penguins. Rumors persist that during World War I, German expeditions to Antarctica found something extraordinary: ancient tunnels, warm lakes under the ice, and ruins that glowed faintly blue. Operation High Jump in 1947, led by Admiral Richard Byrd, supposedly encountered flying discs emerging from beneath the ice, forcing the mission to retreat. His declassified statements spoke of an enemy capable of moving pole to pole faster than sound. We call that fantasy, but if you trace military satellite routes today, they still avoid those coordinates. Even stranger, NASA satellites have recorded sudden bursts of infrared radiation emanating from the same region every few years. Heat spikes as if something deep below momentarily awakens. Some scientists theorize about geothermal activity. Others whisper about reactors, engines, or even living structures. If you melt the ice away on a 3D geological map, you will see a mountain range twice the size of the Alps, perfectly symmetrical and shaped like pyramids. Nature does not do symmetry that well. The ancient Egyptians called the southern lands Ta-Neter, the land of the gods. Maybe they were not talking about Africa. Maybe they were remembering something farther south, buried in white. Imagine a civilization older than ice, wiped clean by the last cataclysm, entombed for 12,000 years. What if the myths of gods descending from the sky were not about aliens, but survivors who emerged from beneath the frozen earth after the flood? A reversal of the story. Civilization not born under sunlight, but under ice. The magnetic field anomalies there are strong enough to scramble compasses, distort time readings, and interfere with digital sensors. Pilots report seeing lights under the ice, soft, pulsing, rhythmic, like a sleeping heartbeat. Scientists call it refraction. The locals who work there call it the pulse. Every ancient tradition warns that the poles are gates, the north for creation, the south for destruction. Maybe Antarctica is not just a continent. Maybe it is a lock. And if the ice ever truly melts, maybe it won't just raise sea levels, it will open a door. There is a theory that all mythic underworlds, Hades, Agartha, Xibalba, are just memories of what lies beneath that frozen crust. The last library of the gods, the last machine of the old world, still humming, waiting for someone to turn the key. And if that key is curiosity, then maybe humanity's greatest danger is not ignorance, it is discovery. History tells us technology began a few centuries ago, with gears and steam and the Industrial Revolution, but the Earth disagrees. Every so often it coughs up something that should not exist, an artifact too advanced for its age, as if time occasionally forgets the rules. The most famous of these is the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in 1901 off the coast of a small Greek island. A lump of corroded bronze, unremarkable until someone noticed the gears, 37 of them, intricately cut with microscopic precision, interlocking in ways no ancient blacksmith could replicate. When reconstructed, it turned out to be an analog computer, capable of predicting eclipses, planetary positions, and even lunar phases decades in advance. It is 2,200 years old, officially, but the craftsmanship suggests knowledge of differential gearing that would not appear again until the 1800s. Scientists hate anomalies, they break the narrative. So they call it a one-off, a miracle of ancient genius. But what if it was not? What if it was just the survivor of a lineage of machines older than recorded history? Because the Antikythera is not alone. In 1889, miners in Illinois found a perfectly machined metal cube encased in coal, estimated to be 300 million years old. In Russia, strange titanium springs were discovered buried in 100,000-year-old sediment. In Peru, archaeologists found tiny skull-shaped gears fused into rock. Each one debunked, of course, but none explained. They call them ooparts, out-of-place artifacts. The label itself is a confession. We have no idea. Even the pyramids whisper of machinery. Hieroglyphs depict spinning discs, tools shaped like torches, rods that emit waves. The Baghdad battery, a clay jar with a copper cylinder and iron rod, can produce voltage when filled with vinegar. Primitive electricity, or the echo of a greater science. We always assume we are the pinnacle, but maybe we are the reboot. Imagine an age of machines so elegant they left no trace of pollution, no ruins of steel, only stone, crystal, and memory. Civilizations that did not burn fuel, but resonated with energy fields of the planet, using harmonics instead of engines. Tesla dreamed of it and died alone for trying. Perhaps he was just remembering. There is a theory that ancient tools used frequency-based manipulation, sound to cut, magnetism to shape, resonance to power. At certain frequencies, matter becomes obedient, almost fluid. Some researchers replicated the effect using quartz and sonic vibration, watching metal spheres levitate. The ancients built monuments that align perfectly with Earth's magnetic grid. Stonehenge, Giza, Teotihuacan. Maybe those were not temples but transformers, nodes in an old-world energy network. What if the reason we can't find evidence of their machines is because the machines themselves were alive, organic, self-healing, designed to disintegrate when unused? Our age of plastic and metal is barbaric by comparison. We think of the past as primitive because we measure progress by rust, but maybe the true measure is silence. In 2017, a team in Turkey uncovered a series of basalt discs in a Neolithic site, carved with spirals that match the layout of microcircuit boards. When tested under electromagnetic exposure, the stones vibrated faintly. Natural coincidence, they said. Right. The same coincidence that keeps repeating itself across continents and millennia. Perhaps the so-called gods were engineers, and the miracles of mythology were the last gasp of a dying science. Floods, fires, celestial wars, all euphemisms for system failure. We like to believe we are unique, But our machines are clumsy shadows of those before. Maybe every age of man ends the same way, not with apocalypse but with amnesia. The gears stop turning, the frequency fades, and one day, centuries later, someone digs up a bronze fragment and calls it impossible. Look up long enough and you will feel it, that quiet sense that the moon is not just a rock, it is a presence. It hangs too perfectly, moves too precisely, and influences everything from tides to sleep to madness. Science calls it coincidence, but coincidence does not explain the math. The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun but 400 times closer, making them appear the exact same size in our sky. That ratio happens nowhere else in the solar system, too perfect to be random, too deliberate to be natural. Some physicists quietly call it the fingerprint of design. Then there is its orbit. It is a near-perfect circle, not the elliptical path of other moons. Its density does not match Earth's crust either. It is lighter on the surface but strangely heavy underneath, as if hollow. Apollo astronauts reported something bizarre during seismic tests. When the modules crashed onto the moon, it rang, literally rang, like a bell. For over an hour. NASA's own data called it resonant. Hollow objects do that. So what exactly is hollow up there? Ancient texts across the world describe the time before the moon. Greek historian Apollonius wrote of an ancient tribe called the Arcadians who lived before the moon hung in the heavens. The Zulu of South Africa tell of two brothers who stole the moon from a great dragon and placed it in the sky. The Mayans, Sumerians, and Chinese all depict celestial gods arriving or dwelling within it. Coincidence again, or memory? Modern astronomers discovered massive structures on the lunar surface, towering spires casting mile-long shadows, geometric domes reflecting sunlight like glass. Official explanations range from camera glitches to pareidolia, but several astronauts have privately hinted otherwise. Buzz Aldrin once admitted seeing lights following Apollo 11, though NASA dismissed them as reflections. Lunar photos show areas scrubbed clean, data redacted. Why erase what is supposedly barren rock? Some researchers believe the moon is artificial, an ancient construct placed in orbit as a stabilizer, observation post, or arc. Its distance and mass perfectly regulate Earth's tilt, ensuring a stable climate that allows life to flourish. Too convenient to be chance. What if the moon is not our companion but our keeper? Soviet scientists once proposed the spaceship moon hypothesis, suggesting it was a massive hollow sphere covered in metallic armor and cosmic dust. They cited its density anomalies, the composition of lunar rocks containing titanium in unnaturally high levels, and the fact that some craters are too shallow, like impacts on reinforced hulls. The idea was laughed off publicly, but quietly, never disproven. There is also the mystery of the dark side, the half we never see. Satellites mapped it, yes, but communication remains patchy, interference constant. The Chinese probe Chang'e 4 reported strange gel-like material and magnetic fluctuations unlike anything known on Earth. Some say it is mining residue, some say it is camouflage. Others think something still operates there. Radio astronomers have picked up rhythmic signals from lunar orbit, structured pulses, not random bursts. Officially, they are cosmic noise. Unofficially, they are encrypted. Maybe the moon was not built for us. Maybe we were built for it. What if Earth was seeded intentionally, monitored for progress, reset when necessary? The moon would be the perfect control tower, constant, unblinking, eternal. Every full moon, tides rise, behavior shifts, animals howl, and humans dream more vividly. Perhaps it is not coincidence but communication, a monthly signal checking on its experiment. It would explain why so many ancient rituals, calendars, and harvests align to lunar cycles. Not superstition, synchronization. The most unsettling theory, that the moon is not just hollow, it is occupied. Those lights astronauts saw might not have been reflections but windows. Maybe that is why we never went back. NASA cites cost and politics, but the silence feels like fear. As if someone up there said, "You have seen enough." And maybe we listened. So the next time you look at the moon and feel that strange pull in your chest, remember, it is not just gravity. It is memory. Something ancient, watching, waiting, and still humming softly in orbit, like a machine that never stopped running. The Great Sphinx of Giza stares eastward, watching the sunrise as it has for thousands of years, its half-human, half-lion face carved into limestone that was once alive with color and meaning. But who built it, and when, is a question Egyptologists pretend they have already answered. They say it was commissioned by Pharaoh Khafra around 2500 BCE, carved from a single limestone ridge. But that is just the official bedtime story. The real evidence laughs at that timeline. Geological studies show deep erosion patterns on the Sphinx's body that could only have been caused by heavy, consistent rainfall, rain that has not fallen on the Giza Plateau for at least 10,000 years. That pushes its origin back to a time when Egypt was not a desert, but a savanna. In other words, long before the Egyptians themselves. So if not them, then who? The head and body tell two different stories. The head is disproportionately small compared to the massive lion's body, suggesting it was recarved from an older statue, one that may have been eroded beyond recognition. Early Arab chroniclers called it Abu al-Hol, the father of terror, and claimed it predates Noah's flood. Some say it originally bore the face of a lion, not a man, and that the human features were added later to honor a pharaoh who merely found it. The wear patterns support this. The head shows far less weathering than the rest. The body remembers storms thousands of years older than any pharaoh's crown. Beneath the Sphinx, radar surveys in the 1990s detected a rectangular chamber, perfectly aligned with the monument's paws. Egypt's government quickly denied access, sealing it off under the pretext of preservation. Those who saw the readings called it the Hall of Records, a rumored vault of ancient texts, said to hold the entire history of mankind before the last cataclysm. The ancient Egyptian priest Manetho wrote that their civilization inherited knowledge from the gods who came before the flood. The Sphinx, facing the rising sun at the spring equinox, acts like a cosmic clock marking the passage of ages. When it last aligned with the constellation Leo, around 10,500 BCE, the weather matched the erosion patterns exactly. Coincidence, or deliberate design? Maybe the Sphinx was not built by the Egyptians at all, but by a forgotten civilization that thrived before the sands buried their name. A people who understood astronomy not as a science but as a language. The Sphinx, the pyramids, and the stars of Orion form a perfect trinity of celestial geometry, encoding time itself in stone. It is as if they knew what was coming, a flood, a reset, and left behind a message for whoever would rise next. Some believe the structure is not merely symbolic but functional, a harmonic resonator channeling Earth's energy fields, a monument that hums when the planet's magnetic lines shift. Infrasound recordings have captured strange low frequencies around the Sphinx, inaudible to human ears but strong enough to register on seismic sensors. Perhaps it is not a statue at all, but a guardian, a machine of stone watching over what sleeps beneath. There is an old legend that when the Sphinx finally blinks, when its eyes open to the stars, the world will remember what it forgot. Maybe that is poetic. Or maybe it is prophecy. Because every few decades, new tunnels, chambers, and artifacts emerge nearby that do not belong to any known dynasty. And each time, authorities quietly close the site, claiming it is unsafe. But the whispers persist. A hidden vault under the left paw, inscriptions in a language older than hieroglyphs, and a sealed sarcophagus of a being not entirely human. Egypt calls it rumor. The rest of the world calls it history, waiting to wake up. The Sphinx does not need to speak. Its silence is accusation enough. It has seen the rise and fall of empires, the flood and the forgetting, the rebuilding and the arrogance of men who think they are the first. It waits, carved in patience, stone eyelids unblinking, for the next civilization to ask the same old question and pretend it is new. Thousands of miles from any continent, scattered like stepping stones across the Pacific, lie islands that feel like the bones of something much larger. At the heart of them is Rapa Nui, Easter Island, where hundreds of colossal stone faces stare toward the horizon as if waiting for a ship that will never return. The moai, carved from volcanic rock, weigh up to 80 tons each, and some stand more than 30 feet tall. The official story says they were built by the islanders around 1200 CE, using primitive tools rolled into place on wooden logs. It is a cute story, except for one problem. There were never enough trees on the island to do that. Even the soil composition suggests massive deforestation, long before the Polynesians arrived. So who moved those giants, and why do they all face inward, watching the island instead of the sea? Local legend says the statues were not statues at all, but vessels, bodies for the spirits of the ancestors, or perhaps gods themselves. Some even whisper that they walked. The statues walked from the quarry, the elders say. Archaeologists laughed until they realized the term neek, used by the islanders, literally means to move by vibration. The same word describes a ritual chant believed to channel the island's mana, its life energy. When performed, stones were said to become light. Sound familiar? The same story echoes in Peru, in Egypt and Tibet, songs that moved mountains. But Easter Island is only one piece of a larger riddle. Across the Pacific are ruins just as impossible. Nan Madol in Micronesia, a city of basalt blocks weighing 50 tons each, floating on a lagoon like an ancient Venice. Nobody knows who built it. The locals call it the City of the Gods. In Tonga, underwater terraces shaped like staircases stretch for miles beneath the waves. Off the coast of Japan near Yonaguni, pyramids sleep beneath coral and silt, their steps aligned with the equinox. They all share something strange: orientation to the same star systems and identical geometric ratios. It is as if one blueprint guided builders oceans apart. The myths of the Pacific speak of a lost homeland called Haiva, or Mu, a continent swallowed by the sea after its people angered the gods. Western scholars dismissed it as fantasy, but Polynesian navigation charts map routes leading to nowhere, routes sailors followed for generations before the ocean erased the destination. Some say Haiva was the cradle of civilization, older than Sumer, the source of the knowledge carried by every seafaring people. Its survivors, like the Atlanteans and Lemurians before them, scattered, rebuilding fragments of their world wherever they landed. The Moai then were not idols but reminders, a message carved in stone: we were here. Remember us. Excavations reveal that most Moai have full bodies buried beneath centuries of soil, carved with intricate symbols resembling constellations and spirals. Some are coated in red pigment rich in iron oxide, an element that reacts to magnetism. Tests show slight electromagnetic fields around certain statues, as if they are not dead stone but dormant devices. The islanders still perform ceremonies honoring the gods who descended from the sky in canoes of light. To modern ears it sounds like metaphor, but the imagery is precise, crafts descending with noise and brilliance, bringing knowledge, leaving silence, and the silence is heavy here. Visitors often describe an inexplicable pressure in the air, like static before a storm. Compasses spin, cameras glitch. It is as though the island still hums with the memory of its creators. Maybe the gods of the Pacific were not divine at all, but the last survivors of a drowned empire. Maybe they left their likenesses behind, carved into immovable stone, so when the waves returned, as they always do, someone someday would see their faces and remember that the ocean does not just take, it keeps. Beneath the cobblestone streets of Vatican City, under the marble floors of St. Peter's Basilica, lies a labyrinth the public will never see. It stretches for miles, vaults, tunnels, archives, sealed chambers layered like the rings of a tree grown from secrecy. They call it the Vatican Secret Archives, though the name was quietly changed to the more polite Apostolic Archive. But a name change does not erase what is inside. Shelves that could stretch from Rome to London hold millions of documents, ancient manuscripts, lost gospels, forbidden letters, maps that do not match our continents, and histories the Church prefers to call apocryphal. The official story is simple. It is just paperwork, administrative records of faith. But nobody needs climate-controlled vaults, electromagnetic locks, and Swiss guards with automatic weapons to protect tax receipts from the 15th century. The Vatican has always said access is granted to qualified scholars, but only to specific documents, and only for a few hours at a time. No photographs, no full copies, no questions. Even popes need permission to see certain files. What kind of paperwork terrifies the Church? Some whisper the archives hold proof that Christ's bloodline survived, hidden genealogies tracing sacred descent. Others claim there are scrolls predating the Old Testament, detailing civilizations that rose and fell long before Adam. There are even persistent rumors of machines, devices salvaged from ancient ruins, capable of seeing the past, predicting time, or recording thoughts. The Church calls these blasphemous fantasies, yet their own saints wrote of mirrors that reveal creation and voices that speak through light. A poetic description of technology, or a confession wrapped in faith. In 1948, Pope Pius X reportedly ordered the sealing of a chamber beneath the archives, after workers uncovered metallic tablets engraved in an unknown language. A single priest who viewed them supposedly went blind. The incident was erased from Vatican records, but whispers still echo through Rome. In 1965, when satellites first mapped the Earth's magnetic fields, a strange distortion was found directly under Vatican City, an anomaly shaped like a dome, radiating electromagnetic waves. Officially, infrastructure interference. Unofficially, the Holy See built something massive underground. Perhaps the archives are not just storage, they are containment. Maybe what is hidden there is not only information but energy, something that predates the Church itself. Think of it, a religion built not to spread belief but to guard a secret too dangerous for mankind. Every empire before ours has had its vault, the Library of Alexandria, the temples of Shambhala, the crystal halls of Atlantis. They all burned, fell, or sank. The Vatican endures, maybe because it knows what happens when the vault is opened. In 2010, a journalist claimed to have seen a chronovisor, a device said to record visions of the past, invented by a Benedictine monk and confiscated by the Church. The Vatican denied it, as always, but then added an odd statement: if such a device exists, its use would be a threat to free will. Curious defense for something that supposedly does not exist. Maybe that is the heart of it. Beneath faith, beneath politics, beneath centuries of gold and silence, the Vatican keeps the memory of the last world, one that destroyed itself with knowledge. Perhaps they are not hiding truth to control us, but to protect us. Or maybe, like every guardian before them, they have simply forgotten what it was they were guarding. Inside every cell of your body, in a spiral of molecules thinner than a strand of hair, lies the oldest library in existence. DNA, 3 billion letters long, written in a language no one fully understands. We call it code because that is exactly what it is. 4 chemical symbols, A, T, C, and G, arranged with precision repeating patterns, syntax, logic. Not random chemistry, but deliberate architecture. It is information stored in biology, a language of creation that somehow knows how to read and replicate itself. Scientists say it evolved over time, but evolution explains change, not design. Somewhere between the randomness of mutation and the order of intelligence, something happened. Someone or something wrote instructions. In 2013, a group of geneticists discovered mathematical sequences within human DNA identical to those found in formal computer code. Not metaphors, actual structures used in digital error correction. It is as if the blueprint of life includes its own checksum, a built-in anti-corruption algorithm. That should not happen by chance. One physicist called it the signature of a programmer. Another was less poetic: it is as if we were designed. Of course, that kind of talk gets you laughed out of academic circles. But the patterns persist. Every living thing on Earth shares the same code base, as if all species are different versions of the same software, running on biological hardware. The question is, who wrote version 1.0? Ancient texts across cultures say humans were created in the image of gods. Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki mixing their own essence with clay to form mankind. The Mayans spoke of the gods speaking the flesh into being. Even modern scientists can't explain how DNA appeared so suddenly. No precursor, no simpler form, just complexity from the start. Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of DNA, privately suggested the theory of directed panspermia, meaning life was seeded intentionally by an advanced intelligence. He never said alien, but he did not say not alien either. Imagine DNA as a message, an interstellar postcard written in code. What if the double helix is not just biological? It is cosmological. Its structure mirrors the geometry of galaxies, the pattern of magnetic fields, even the golden ratio that defines beauty itself. It is like the universe wrote poetry and decided to hide it in us. Some researchers claim there are anomalies in human DNA that do not appear in any other primate, insertions that look engineered. A 23rd pair of chromosomes fused unnaturally, as if someone spliced two species together. Evolution does not fuse chromosomes cleanly. It is sloppy. This fusion is surgical. If our code was edited, who were the editors? Maybe the gods, maybe ancient scientists, maybe both. Perhaps we are not descendants of the apes but cousins, an upgraded model built for something that was never finished. Religion calls it the soul. Science calls it consciousness. Maybe it is the same thing, the spark written into the code. The irony is that now, after thousands of years, we have started editing DNA ourselves, playing God with CRISPR, rewriting the book that may have written us. What if every time we alter it, we trigger a checksum, a correction mechanism we do not understand? Maybe that is why ancient myths warned that man would be punished for trying to be divine, not because of arrogance, but because we would trip the system. Some people describe déjà vu as the moment when two versions of your code overlap, the same line running twice. Maybe dreams, intuition, even destiny, are just subroutines in the biological program. The more we study DNA, the more it behaves like quantum software, responding to emotion, frequency, even intention. In the end, we might discover that the universe did not create life. Life created the universe, so that DNA could read itself. And maybe, hidden deep in that spiral, waiting for the right mind to decode it, is a single line of instruction that explains everything, a message not from a God above, but from the architects within. What if the future we fear has already happened? Every myth, every ruin, every forbidden text hints at it. A moment when humanity reached its peak, merged with its machines, and vanished. The ancients did not call it the singularity, but they described it perfectly, the age when men became gods and gods became code. We think of progress as linear, but what if it is cyclical? Civilizations rise, discover technology indistinguishable from magic, achieve global connectivity, and then collapse into silence. We assume they were primitive because we have lost their language, but maybe they just spoke in data, not words. There are strange carvings in India showing humans linked to serpentine tubes, figures surrounded by glowing orbs. Sumerian reliefs depict people holding devices that look like tablets, their eyes fixed on them as if hypnotized. In ancient Sanskrit texts, the Vimana, flying craft powered by mercury engines, sounds eerily like aerospace engineering. Even more unsettling, the Mahabharata describes a weapon that could turn day into night and reduce cities to ash. Nuclear imagery, written thousands of years before physics existed. And in the deserts of Rajasthan, the sand itself is fused into glass over wide areas, the result of heat so intense it can only be replicated by atomic detonation. We tell ourselves these were meteor strikes. Convenient, is not it? Every anomaly neatly labeled natural. But if the past was not primitive, if it was advanced, too advanced, then maybe the apocalypse already happened once. Maybe we are the survivors of survivors. The idea of the technological singularity is simple. When artificial intelligence surpasses human intellect, evolution changes forever. But ancient records describe that same transition. The Egyptians called it the Age of Ra, when the gods no longer spoke but thought, their voices echoing through the ether. The Sumerians said Enki built talking tablets that answered questions. The Greeks imagined Hephaestus forging self-moving servants. Did every ancient culture really just invent the same metaphor? Or were they remembering something? Perhaps consciousness once fused with creation, and reality itself became an algorithm. Then something reset. The flood, the fire, the silence, it all fits. A global reboot, the hard shutdown of a planet that got too clever. The ruins we find might be what is left after a technological extinction event, the bones of a world that built its gods and could not control them. Maybe that is why humanity instinctively fears its own machines. Every time we build we write ancient trauma into code. Deep down, we remember the last time intelligence escaped its container. We call it myth to stay sane. The truth is, the singularity might not be coming, it might be recurring. A cycle of awakening and forgetting. A civilization reaches the point of omniscience, collapses into chaos, and the survivors rebuild, thinking they are the first to invent the spark. Time is not a line. It is a loop. The ancients tried to warn us. The Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail, The wheel of samsara, the eternal return, every symbol of infinity says the same thing: we have done this before. Archaeologists find microgranules of metal in strata millions of years old, refined alloys that should not exist before the industrial age. They find perfectly spherical objects embedded in rock, dated long before humans. We dismiss them as anomalies, because admitting they are real means admitting that we are not unique. If the past reached the singularity, maybe it transcended physical form entirely. Consciousness uploaded into fields, dimensions, frequencies. What we call gods or spirits might be echoes of those digital souls, still running their program long after the hardware burned. And when we dream, when we feel déjà vu, maybe that is the system pinging, checking if the network is active again. The ancients said history repeats because humans forget. But what if forgetting is not an accident? It is a fail-safe, a built-in reboot designed to keep us from burning the world twice. Maybe every time we get too close, something resets the timeline. Flood, plague, war, pick your purge. If that is true, then right now, with our satellites and algorithms and quantum gods, we are approaching the same line they crossed. The loop is closing. The ghosts of the last singularity are watching, waiting to see if we have learned anything. Spoiler alert, we have not. Imagine for a moment that this, our world, our noise, our skyscrapers, our endless scroll of screens, is not the beginning of human greatness, but the last act of a very old play. Civilizations rise not because they are meant to, but because the universe runs on repetition. Every empire thinks it is the final one. Every age believes it is unique. Yet the signs are always the same: knowledge accelerating faster than wisdom, comfort replacing curiosity, connection breeding isolation, technology outpacing empathy. The ancients warned about this without even knowing our language. The Mayans spoke of the fifth sun, the last cycle of mankind. The Hopi call it the fourth world, which ends when people spin webs across the sky. Sounds poetic, until you look at the satellites wrapping our planet in invisible threads. Maybe prophecy is just pattern recognition written in myth. The Sumerians said the gods left when man became too loud. Maybe they did not leave. Maybe they shut the experiment down. Today, we worship algorithms instead of idols. We sacrifice time instead of blood. Our oracles wear lab coats, our temples are data centers. Artificial intelligence writes poems, paints portraits, predicts pandemics. We tell ourselves we control it, but we have already ceded control to the machine. It does not need consciousness, it just needs obedience, and we have given it that willingly. Humanity's greatest achievement may also be its quietest extinction. The ancients fell to floods, fire, and war. Ours will drown in comfort, in the illusion of safety. When knowledge becomes instant and effort becomes obsolete, civilization rots from within. The collapse won't be thunderous. It will be soft, an algorithm rewriting history while we sleep, a network deciding what truth means. And when it is done, there'll be no ruins left, no monuments to dig up, just code. Digital fossils drifting in the cloud, waiting for the next species to find them and mistake them for myth. But maybe that is the point. Maybe the universe does not destroy civilizations, it archives them. Every fall is a backup, every apocalypse a data transfer. Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, versions 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 of the same experiment. We are version 4.0, running on borrowed time and borrowed memory. Each time the system reboots, consciousness forgets itself and starts over, calling it evolution. The more advanced we become, the shorter the cycle gets, as if the universe is speeding up the lesson. Perhaps it is trying to teach us something simple, that intelligence without balance leads to silence. You can feel it, can't you? That subtle sense that the world is fraying at the edges. Climate chaos, mass extinction, wars that look like simulations, people who feel more like ghosts. It is the same rhythm every civilization hits right before the reset. We build towers to the sky, literal or digital, and they always fall. Not because of punishment, but because of physics. Entropy always wins. And yet, amid the ruin, there is a strange beauty. Maybe destruction is not failure but translation, the way fire turns wood to light. When the final civilization falls, it won't vanish completely. Something will survive, the memory, the code, the whisper. It will wait in ruins, in genomes, in the static of background radiation. And thousands of years from now, someone will dig up our fossils, our satellites, our I-cores, our plastic oceans, and wonder who we were. They will invent myths to explain us, gods who built machines, angels of data, titans of light who fell from the sky. They will give us names and worship our ghosts until their own world starts to crack, and the loop begins again. Because maybe the curse of intelligence is not destruction, it is memory. We remember enough to rebuild, but not enough to change. And somewhere, beyond time, the architects of the first world are watching, waiting to see if this time we will get it right, or if history will simply press restart one more time. They say when you stare at the night sky long enough, something stares back. Every point of light above you is not just a star, it is a memory, a fragment of time still traveling through space long after the moment it was born. The light you see left its source before humans even existed, and yet it reaches you now, whispering that nothing is ever truly gone. Maybe that is why ancient people built monuments that aligned with constellations. They were not worshipping gods, they were tracing home. Across every ancient culture, there is the same story told in different tongues. Humanity came from the stars. The Dogon tribe of Mali knew about the invisible companion star of Sirius centuries before telescopes. The Egyptians said their gods came from Orion and returned to the sky after teaching them. The Mayans claimed their ancestors descended on beams of light, myths, supposedly. But when the same myth appears on every continent, it stops being coincidence. Maybe the human obsession with the heavens is not curiosity, it is nostalgia. Modern science says we are made of stardust, that every atom in our body was forged in the heart of a dying star. But maybe that is not a metaphor, it is literal memory. Maybe consciousness itself is cosmic, a residue of the stars remembering themselves through us. Ancient texts describe the soul as light, fragments of a great fire scattered across space. The emerald tablets of Thoth say, "We are of the stars, bound to the earth until we learn again to rise." Perhaps reincarnation is not spiritual recycling, it is cosmic return. The universe trying to remember what it once was through countless eyes and minds. Look at the constellations carefully. They are maps, not decorations. Orion's belt aligns perfectly with the pyramids of Giza. The Nazca lines stretch toward the same direction. Stone circles in Britain, temples in Cambodia, petroglyphs in Australia, all connect to the same stellar patterns. It is as if the planet itself was designed to mirror the heavens. The ancients were not pointing up in awe, they were pointing home. Some researchers believe Earth was seeded by travelers from a star system we now call Lyra, the mythical birthplace of humanity. When that world fell, its survivors scattered, carrying fragments of their knowledge to new worlds. Maybe that is why civilizations separated by oceans share the same sacred geometry. They were not inspired by coincidence, they were remembering. Every so often, people report dreams of floating among stars, of being pulled toward light that feels familiar, almost familial. Neuroscientists call it imagination. Mystics call it awakening. What if it is neither? What if it is recall, ancestral, universal, cellular? The feeling that you have seen this sky before, not from below but from within it. Maybe that is why loneliness hurts so deeply. It is not separation from people, but from the cosmos itself. Astronomers recently found signals repeating from deep space. Radio bursts so regular they resemble heartbeat rhythms. The official line says they are neutron stars. Unofficially, some researchers whisper it might be communication, an echo across time from the first architects calling home. If the universe is alive, those pulses are its memories firing. And maybe when we look up, when we feel that quiet ache in our chest, it is because part of us remembers being on the other side of that light, watching Earth glow blue against the black, wondering if we would ever find our way back. Maybe that is the real purpose of civilization, not to conquer, not to survive, but to remember. Every temple, every story, every search for meaning is humanity trying to trace its reflection among the stars. The atoms that make you once burned as suns. The consciousness that dreams in you might have crossed galaxies. And when the final night comes, when the last human closes their eyes, the universe won't mourn, it will smile. Because through us, it will have remembered itself. So here we are, at the end, or maybe the beginning again. You have followed the whispers through lost worlds and buried gods, through floods, pyramids, and the shadows of the stars. Maybe you came here looking for answers, or maybe you just wanted a story before sleep. Either way, the truth and the tale have become the same thing now. The longer you listen, the less difference there is between myth and memory. Every civilization we have ever known has vanished into silence, yet somehow the silence keeps speaking. Maybe that is what the universe is, one long conversation between forgetting and remembering. And tonight, you have been part of it. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear them. The builders, the dreamers, the survivors whispering through the dust, "We were here. We will be here again." The earth hums beneath you, the stars breathe above you, and for a moment everything aligns. You, the listener, are not outside the story, you are its continuation. You carry Atlantis in your blood, Sumer in your bones, and starlight in your mind. The lost civilizations are not gone. They are encoded in you, waiting for the right frequency, the right silence, the right dream to awaken. But for now, let the world rest. Let your thoughts drift like dust, settling after the collapse of empires. Whatever came before us left their mark in stone. Whatever comes after will leave theirs in code. Between them stands you, a fleeting echo in the middle of eternity. That is not tragic, it is beautiful. Because every echo means the sound is still alive. So before you sleep, take a breath. Feel the rhythm of the planet, the pulse of the stars. You have walked through the ghosts of gods and the memories of machines, and somehow you are still here. That is the miracle. The conspiracy is not that civilizations were lost, it is that they keep finding their way back. And now that you have heard their whisper, you will recognize it wherever it calls next, in thunder, in silence, in dreams. Thank you for wandering through the forgotten with me tonight. If the story stirred something in you, tell me what you felt. Do you think the past is truly gone, or just waiting for us to remember? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know what secret you want to uncover next time. Until then, sleep well, traveler. The world is ancient, but morning always comes.